A powerful moment has emerged from Africa that is now echoing far beyond the continent's borders. An African leader has delivered a message that many believe exposes a long-hidden truth about continental sovereignty, foreign influence, and Africa's struggle to control its own destiny. The speech, firm and carefully chosen, has sparked intense debate across Africa and drawn close attention from global powers. At the center of this moment is a growing frustration shared by many African nations. For decades, Africa has been politically independent on paper, yet deeply dependent in practice. Foreign governments, institutions, and companies have continued to shape security, economic policy, and even political direction in many countries. What made this moment different is that the leader did not soften the message. Instead, he openly questioned whether Africa has truly been free to make decisions in its own interest. The leader spoke about sovereignty not as a slogan, but as a real condition that must be defended every day. He argued that true independence means controlling national resources, choosing security partners freely, and setting development priorities without pressure from outside powers. His words resonated because they reflected lived experiences across the continent, where many citizens feel decisions are still influenced by forces far from their own capitals. This statement did not come in isolation. It arrived at a time when several African countries are reassessing their relationships with traditional global partners. Conflicts in the Sahel, rising public anger over economic hardship, and disappointment with past international cooperation have created fertile ground for a new narrative. In this context, the leader's message sounded less like provocation and more like a long overdue truth being spoken aloud. International reactions were immediate but cautious. Some Western officials expressed concern, while others downplayed the remarks as political rhetoric. However, analysts agree that the tone and timing matter. Africa is changing, and leaders are becoming more willing to speak directly about power imbalances that were once discussed only behind closed doors. This first part sets the stage for a much larger story. It is not just about one leader or one speech. It is about a continent questioning the rules that have shaped its relationship with the world for generations. In the next part, we will look at the historical roots of this struggle and why the issue of sovereignty remains so sensitive and unresolved in Africa today.
To understand why the leader's words struck such a deep chord, it is necessary to look at Africa's long and painful history with sovereignty. Most African countries gained independence in the mid-20th century after decades and in some cases centuries of colonial rule. Flags were raised, national anthems were written, and new governments took power. Yet for many nations, true control over their future remained limited. After independence, many African states inherited weak institutions, fragile economies, and borders drawn by colonial powers with little regard for local realities. Former colonial rulers and new global powers continued to play a strong role through economic agreements, military cooperation, and political influence. Loans, aid programs, and security partnerships often came with conditions that shaped national policies from the outside. Over time, this created a sense of unfinished independence. African governments were officially sovereign, but key decisions about currency, natural resources, trade, and security were often influenced by external actors. For ordinary citizens, this reality was felt through poverty, unemployment, and ongoing instability, even as foreign companies profited from Africa's minerals, oil, and land. The leader who spoke out directly referenced this history. He argued that Africa was trapped in a system designed to keep it dependent, not developing. According to his message, sovereignty cannot exist when a country cannot freely decide how to protect its people, use its resources, or choose its allies. These ideas resonated because they reflected frustrations that have been passed down through generations. In recent years, these historical wounds have been reopened by new crises. Armed conflicts, rising debt, and climate pressure have exposed how vulnerable many African economies still are. When foreign partners failed to deliver lasting security or economic growth, public anger grew. Many began to question whether old partnerships were truly serving African interests. This background explains why the leader's message felt so powerful. It was not seen as rewriting history, but as finally naming it honestly. By connecting today's struggles to the past, he reminded Africans that sovereignty is not something granted once and kept forever. It must be protected, defended, and constantly renewed. In the next part, attention will turn to the present moment. We will examine what exactly the leader revealed about modern foreign influence in Africa and why his words are being seen as a direct challenge to the existing global order.
In the third part of his message, the African leader moved from history to the present, revealing what he described as the modern face of foreign control. Unlike the colonial past, today's influence is not enforced by direct rule, but through economic pressure, security dependence, and political expectations. This form of control, he argued, is quieter, but just as powerful. He spoke openly about how foreign aid and loans can limit freedom of choice. While presented as support, such assistance often comes with strict conditions that shape national budgets, laws, and development plans. According to the leader, this system forces governments to prioritize outside demands over local needs, weakening public trust and slowing real progress. Security was another key issue. Many African countries rely heavily on foreign forces, training, or intelligence to fight armed groups. The leader questioned why, after years of cooperation, insecurity remains widespread. He argued that dependence on external security solutions has prevented African states from building strong, independent defense systems. In his view, true sovereignty cannot exist if a country cannot protect itself on its own terms. Economic influence was also highlighted. Africa is rich in natural resources, yet much of the profit flows abroad. Foreign companies extract minerals, oil, and agricultural products, while local communities see little benefit. The leader described this as a modern form of exploitation, where ownership may be African in name, but control lies elsewhere. What made these claims powerful was not just the criticism, but the clarity. The leader did not attack individual countries directly. Instead, he challenged the structure of global relationships that, he said, keep Africa at the bottom of the economic chain. This approach gave his message credibility and widened its appeal. Across Africa, many citizens recognized these realities in their own lives. Rising living costs, unemployment, and insecurity made the leader's words feel personal and urgent. Analysts noted that the speech captured a growing belief that Africa must rethink how it engages with the world. This part reveals why this moment matters now. It shows that the debate is no longer about past injustice alone, but about present choices and future direction. In the next part, we will examine how African governments and regional institutions are reacting to this message and whether it could lead to real change. The leader's message quickly spread across Africa, sparking strong reactions from governments, political groups, and ordinary citizens. In many countries, the speech was shared widely, discussed on radio shows, and debated in public spaces. For supporters, it felt like a moment of honesty that had been missing from African leadership for a long time. Several African leaders expressed quiet support, even if they did not publicly repeat the same strong language. Analysts say many governments share similar concerns, but are cautious about speaking openly due to diplomatic and economic pressure.
Still, the message has clearly shifted the conversation. Issues of sovereignty, dignity, and control over national decisions are now being discussed more openly than before. Regional organizations have taken a careful approach. While they emphasize unity and stability, they also acknowledge the growing demand for fairer international partnerships. Officials within these bodies say African cooperation must be based on mutual respect, not dependency. This careful language shows how sensitive the issue has become. Public reaction has been especially strong among young Africans. Many see the leaders' words as a reflection of their own frustration with unemployment, insecurity, and lack of opportunity. To them, sovereignty is not an abstract idea, but a question of whether their future is being decided at home or abroad. Social media platforms have amplified these voices, turning the speech into a continent-wide discussion. Not everyone agrees with the message. Critics warn that rejecting foreign partnerships could harm fragile economies and isolate African states from global markets. They argue that cooperation, even if imperfect, is still necessary in a globalized world. This debate highlights the difficult balance African countries face between independence and cooperation. This part shows that the leader did more than give a speech. He opened a serious conversation across Africa about power, responsibility, and the path forward. In the next part, we will look at how global powers are responding and what this moment means for Africa's place in the world.
The strong message from the African leader did not stay within the continent. Global powers quickly took notice, understanding that the words reflected more than personal opinion. They signaled a deeper shift in how parts of Africa now view long-standing international relationships. Reactions from outside the continent have been measured, but the concern behind them is clear. Western governments responded carefully, avoiding direct confrontation while stressing the importance of cooperation and stability. Officials emphasized that partnerships with Africa are meant to support development, security, and democratic institutions. At the same time, some privately acknowledged that trust has weakened in recent years and that old approaches may no longer be effective. International financial institutions also followed the discussion closely. Africa remains a major recipient of loans and aid, and any change in political direction could affect economic agreements. Analysts say these institutions may face increasing pressure to reform how they operate, especially regarding conditions attached to funding. The leader's message has brought renewed attention to questions of fairness and accountability in global finance. Emerging global powers viewed the moment as both an opportunity and a test. Some see a chance to deepen ties with African states by offering alternative forms of cooperation. However, experts warn that replacing one dependency with another would fail to address the core issue raised by the leader. True sovereignty, they argue, requires balanced partnerships, not new forms of control. International media coverage has framed the speech as a sign of Africa's growing confidence on the world stage. Commentators note that African leaders are increasingly willing to challenge established power structures and demand respect. This shift is being closely studied in diplomatic circles, where it is seen as part of a broader change in global politics. This part makes clear that this moment has global importance. Africa is no longer simply reacting to international decisions, but is actively shaping the conversation. In the final part, we will explore what this could mean for the future of African sovereignty and whether this bold message can lead to lasting transformation. As the debate continues, many are asking whether this powerful message can lead to real and lasting change for Africa. The leader's words have opened a door, but walking through it will require action, unity, and long-term commitment.
Sovereignty, as he made clear, is not achieved by speeches alone. It depends on strong institutions, accountable leadership, and the ability to meet people's basic needs. For African governments, this moment presents both an opportunity and a challenge. If leaders truly want greater independence, they must invest in local industries, education, and security systems that serve their own people first. Reducing dependence on foreign aid and loans will require difficult reforms and regional cooperation. Success will depend on whether countries can work together rather than face global pressure alone. For citizens, the message has raised expectations. Many now want to see clear improvements in daily life, including better security, jobs, and public services. If leaders fail to deliver, public support could quickly turn into disappointment. This is why analysts say the coming years will be critical. Words about sovereignty must be matched with visible progress. Globally, this moment may change how Africa is treated. International partners are being reminded that respect and equality matter more than ever. If they adapt and listen, new and healthier partnerships could emerge. If they resist change, Africa may continue to look for alternative paths. This part shows that this is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a new phase. Africa is questioning old systems and imagining a different future. Whether this leads to true independence or new challenges will depend on the choices made now. One thing is clear: the conversation about African sovereignty has reached a point where it can no longer be ignored.
As this historic moment continues to unfold, it is clear that the African leader's message has become more than a speech. It has turned into a symbol of a wider awakening across the continent. For many Africans, it represents a long-suppressed demand to be heard, respected, and treated as equal partners in global affairs. This chapter is defining because it challenges both African leaders and the international community. African governments are being called upon to prove that sovereignty means better lives for their people, not just stronger words. The world, meanwhile, is being asked to accept an Africa that wants cooperation without control and partnership without pressure. The future will not be simple. Global politics is changing, and Africa sits at the center of that change. New alliances, economic models, and security strategies will test the continent's ability to stay united and focused on its own priorities. Mistakes will be made, but the willingness to question old systems is already a powerful step forward. What makes this moment truly important is its timing. A young, connected generation is watching closely and demanding results. They are no longer satisfied with symbolic independence. They want real opportunity, dignity, and control over their future. Their voices are shaping a new political reality that leaders cannot ignore. In the end, this story is not just about one leader exposing a truth. It is about Africa deciding what it wants to become. Whether this moment leads to lasting change or fades into history will depend on action, unity, and courage. But one thing is certain: the conversation about African sovereignty has entered a new era, and the world is now listening.